this lesson, you'll learn more about the content provider key method parameters and return values. In previous lessons, we examined URIs and cursors, and we'll start looking at the others with content values. Remember, the content values object is one of the major objects that works with the content resolver in our data subset block. The content values object specifies pairs of values for the column and content of a cell in our data block. It's used when putting data into a database using the insert or update methods. In the code sample shown here, first a content values object is instantiated, and next the put method of the content values class is used to add pairs of values where the title is matched with milk, here and here, and the type is matched with soy. The rows operated on would be determined by other parameters, the URI or the selection parameters. In the note editor Java code, let's look at the insert method use of content values. Note editor is one of the content interface activities that initiates database actions. In statement 539, a content values variable is defined with the name values. Then down at statement 573, the put method is used to add the combination of column name note and a text string to the content values object. In statement 586, the values object is used as a parameter for an update method. Now let's move on to the selection parameters. There are two selection parameters, clause and the arguments. The selection clause specifies column names using a string as shown here. It's formatted as an SQL where clause, excluding the where word itself. Now we can make compound designations like the one shown here using the AND keyword. Remember, we'll learn more about SQL in the lessons on database. And we can include optional designations for arguments for matching specific values. It's done by including question marks, as you see here. These question marks are matched up with the corresponding parameter in the argument string. The matching is done based on the order of the values. So, for example, title is our first column, and it's matched with the first argument, milk. And type is matched with the second argument, soy. So, rows will be selected that have a title of milk and a type of soy. Note that the Notepad sample app doesn't include a type column as I've included here. I'm using one here to help demonstrate some of the parameters. If our data set looked like the example here, where there was one row meeting the criteria, that row would be selected for the query, update, or delete, depending on the method being used. Note that the selection clause is a string, and the selection arguments are a string array. The selection arguments can be null if the URI singles out a specific row. The Notepad sample app doesn't have any examples of non-null selection parameters. In the Note Editor Java code at statement 586, we have an example of an update method with null values for selection parameters. And in this case, the URI specifies an identifier for a specific row. And now let's look at the projection parameter. The projection parameter tells the query method what columns to include when it pulls rows from the database. Note that these columns can be different than the columns used for selecting rows. In this example, the ID and title columns are being selected. The projection is defined as a string array. In the Notepad app notes list Java code in statement 59, a projection is defined as including the ID and title columns. It's used for a query in statement 105. The sort order parameter tells the query method what column to use to sort the results of a query. It's defined as a string. In the Notepad app notes list Java code in statement 108, a sort order is used in the same query we just looked at. The value for the default sort order constant is defined in the Notepad Java code at statement 124, and it's defined as modified DESC. The cancellation signal class and object provide the capability for a content interface function to stop the processing of a query method while it's still retrieving data. This is useful for stopping long-running queries if there are problems for some reason and there's no need to finish. Cancellation signal was introduced in API 16, and if you need to retain compatibility with releases before API 16, you need to implement a version of the query method without it in addition to the query method that uses it. To create a cancellation signal object, use the constructor as shown here, and to cancel a query, use the cancel method as shown here. Cancellation signal isn't used in the Notepad app. MIME type, which is a return from the getType method, provides information about the file type. And there are two groups of MIME types, standard and vendor-specific custom. In Android, you can use either. The general MIME type format is type, subtype, and optional parameters separated by forward slashes. Standard MIME types are entities like application, audio, image, message, text, and video. Sample text subtypes are calendar, plain, HTML, and XML. So an example of an HTML text MIME type would be text/HTML. And you can read more about standard MIME types in the sources linked to here. The type portion of an Android MIME type is vnd.android.cursor.dir for multiple rows. For a single row, vnd Android cursor item. A subtype example is vnd.google.note, so an example of a full MIME type would be as shown here, vnd.android.cursor.dir/vnd.google.note. And you can read more about the Android MIME types at this source on the developer's website here. In the Notepad source, some MIME types are defined in Statement 113 for a directory of nodes, and in Statement 119 for a single node. In the Notepad provider source, at Statement 341, the MIME type is chosen based on the URI. For example, the single node MIME type is returned for a Note ID URI. That's our lesson on the content provider method parameters. And now on to a lesson on how to apply the content provider methods in your content interface and content provider modules.